Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you guys are in the world. My name is Caroline Moore. If you've watched the last few sessions, you'll be well aware of who I am by this point. I'm the Customer Marketing Executive here at AppsAnywhere. I'm here today to introduce Roger from Middlesex University, who will be taking you guys through their journey with AppsAnywhere. Before we begin, I just have a couple of housekeeping rules. Well, not rules, but just, information that you guys might need important. Basically, you guys are all in listen-only mode. You will not have the ability to raise your hand to speak or to show your webcam. However, you do have the function for questions, which we advise that you do use. Please ask as many questions as you like throughout the session. If you could just provide a little context around the questions, just in case Roger does not get to them till later on in the session, just so he understands exactly what you're asking. With that being said, I'm going to hand over now to the lovely Roger.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope you're all well and you've had plenty of coffee so you can sit there and listen to me and my dulcet tones for the next 20 minutes or so. Our presentation is about increasing freedom and flexibility to enhance the student experience. My name is Roger Fox. I'm the Operations Group Manager for the Computing Communication System Service, colloquially known as CCSS, within our infrastructure and our campus. This presentation is around our journey from conception to delivery to where we are today. Following on from Magnus's excellent presentation earlier, I'm not going to be going into such a technical deep dive in relation to our infrastructure. I will touch upon it very, very briefly. But ours is about the journey. So if you are completely and fully immersed as a customer within the AppsAnywhere services and platforms they provide, you're probably not going to get an epiphany or any light bulb moments during this. But if you're just embarking on that journey, I'm hoping that some of what I might discuss may resonate with you as you might be getting to these points in your journey, and hopefully this will be of assistance to you. And obviously, clearly, if you would like to talk about anything that we touch upon today, I'll be more than happy to discuss after the presentation or offline. So, the obligatory slide about Middlesex University. We have 4 campuses across London, Malta, Dubai and Mauritius. We have 4 faculties that all of our students are enrolled in. We only have 1,800 full-time staff based in the UK. We have 20,000 students studying on the London campus. But what I'd like to draw your attention to is we are an incredibly lean central IT service. We have a total of 52 full-time staff in our central IT service, and I'd like to draw out the 6 staff within the desktop development team are responsible for the imaging, software deployment, packaging, updating, desktop environment for the entire university. I have 2 staff in the desktop device logistics team who manage 6,000 endpoints throughout their life cycle across the entire estate. And I have 2 staff within the desk side support team who do exactly what it says on the tin. They support our users who we can't support remotely, who may have hardware break fix issues. So we rely very heavily on partnerships and contracts with our partners to allow us to be such a lean service and still deliver good services to our university community. So where did our journey begin? I had the pleasure of meeting the team in 2016. We had a conversation and we found it was fascinating, so we thought we'd follow it up. We was lucky enough to be invited to some AppsAnywhere user days in Sheffield, Hallam and Durham University, which were enlightening to say the least. We literally realised on the way home from Durham that this is, if it does what it says on the tin, this is exactly what we need to do as part of to solve some of the problems and the pinch points that we have or had during those times. My colleagues and I submitted the business case in 2017. It took a little bit convincing to our executive lead and our investment board, but funding was finally secured in 2018. We then had a regular series of meetings with AppsAnywhere to agree the scope of the project and to deliver what those phases may look like. We then started with a very small proof of concept and a pilot in 2018. It all started with our announcement at the 2018 All-Staff Conference about AppsAnywhere. And we're lucky enough to have a conference where the entire university comes together for an entire day to talk about the futures of the university strategy, etc. During that conference day, we had breakout sessions throughout the day, which was very well attended and attended by colleagues from AppsAnywhere and myself, where we talked about the plan, the vision, where we wanted to go with AppsAnywhere, what it could do, what we believed it could do for us in the future. We were very lucky to have the marvellous and awesome Marcus come on site and do best practice days and training with us. I've seen from Caroline's and Marcus's presentations earlier that there's some really innovative and excellent changes coming to that training and availability of training. But I've got to say, those years ago, when we first started our journey, the ability to have the online training, the packaging, the best practice days were excellent. They were awesome. My team thoroughly enjoyed them and really enjoyed the learning, and it really paid dividends when we first started our journey with AppsAnywhere. So we broke the project down into 5 phases, and I'll just quickly run through the 5 phases with you. Phase 1 in February of 2018, which is the proof of concept and the pilot. Start of the academic year, very small, few labs in our main college building, and first floor open access space within the library where it had a high footfall. That was our proof of concept and pilot. Phase 2, we then started to uplift the infrastructure because we knew that we was going to be doing expanded rollout to our entire student community, with views to making it available for BYOD. Unlike our colleagues in Bergen, students are not required to provide equipment. Hence, we manage circa 6,000 endpoints across the estate for our staff and student user community, and we manage all of those. We do make allowances for BYOD, we do make BYOD available, but ultimately we control and manage the entire estate. This is our very original infrastructure and the design of our AppsAnywhere journey, but through those iterative conversations, technical design authorities, and discovery exercises with our partners within AppsAnywhere, we really thought through the design and tried to future-proof it for what we would really want in the future, i.e. for everybody, anything, anywhere, anytime. And that's what we did. This is currently our design that's been in play now for a few years, and it works really well for us. I don't have any issues with the infrastructure. It works very, very well. It works perfectly for BYOD, for on-prem, off-prem, hardwired, wireless. It works for us. So it was a really, really worthwhile exercise, really drilling down into saying what did the vision look like and how can we build the infrastructure now rather than having to keep changing the production environment going forward. Phase 3. We offered 300 student loan laptops in laptop cabinets for temporary loans for students to use on and off premise. We then utilised AppsAnywhere as the sole software delivery mechanism to those devices, which proved to be a monumental success for us, because one of the problems we always had with our loan laptop scheme was being able to keep those laptops up to date, keep those laptop software titles up to date, because at no point were all 300 laptops ever back on the campus. So we really struggled to keep those machines up to date. AppsAnywhere changed that because we could then manage the software repository locally, we could manage WSUS to update the updates, and that was a major success story for us. Phase 4 was in the summer of 2019, a full deployment to every single Windows student-facing machine that we control. We control circa 3,000 devices on the estate. There are pockets of specialist devices across the estate on specialist hardware that weren't part of that original Big Bang, but I can come back to that later. So we then did the accelerated rollout in June 29, ready for the academic year 2019-2020, and we were ready when the students arrived on campus that September. Phase 5 was to release AppsAnywhere to our entire staff community. We hit a bit of an issue with that, and to which I will come back to that shortly, because it was a bit of an issue, and many of you may have suffered the same issue. Just a quick look. This is our portal. This is the front of our college building. It's all very nice. It's very clean. The setup, the look, easily customizable, easy to use. We've got single sign-on. It works really very well with our Active Directory and Azure AD. It works very, very well for us. Nothing really to jump out of you here, but just a quick look at our portal, all the software tiles that we have here. We got our students involved in the design of the portal originally to say, how do you want the layout? Do you want it alphabetically, by search, by function? And ideally, this is what they wanted. This is what we gave them. With the changes that are coming in the newer versions of AppsAnywhere, we'll be reaching out to our student user community and user voice community again to get their input into how they want it to look and feel going forward, because it's completely ingrained across our estate for our students. The promotion, we started to plant the seeds of change with our students and academic staff by simply just putting posters in rooms and posters outside doors telling people that it's going to change and how you can access software in a slightly different way and how to access information online about the wider project and the benefits that provides students. We then started telling students that these spaces are actually AppsAnywhere enabled. So by word of mouth, we started to see students looking actively for rooms with AppsAnywhere that had been rolled out, as opposed to traditional labs where they could struggle to access specialist software that was only deployed in those rooms. And we naturally started to see students gravitating towards these AppsAnywhere enabled spaces, which told us we were doing something right. We have digital screens and student-facing communication channels across the university, like most universities on this call, or higher education institutions. We really pushed AppsAnywhere as the way forward. And as I said before, we naturally started to see a geodesic where students were actually starting to look for AppsAnywhere enabled spaces to ensure that knowledge transfer, that understanding went through not only the students but to staff. My colleagues and I did a series of roadshows, Q&A sessions, drop-in sessions for staff to talk them through the vision, talk them through the benefits, talk them through the changes, and it was all very well received. You know, we had several sessions and we had lots and lots of really interesting conversations and topics, and the momentum just kept building and building and building. I have a video here, but unfortunately, during the setup of the presentation, Caroline and I have discovered that the audio is not coming through on the presentation, so I'm going to have to skip the video, but the video will be available once the presentation is finished. It is a video that our student corporate team, our corporate comms team created to promote AppsAnywhere for students. It was a really simple message, a really simple video, but really very effective because it was the real students giving a real honest answer about how it's affecting them and how they use it going forward. So unfortunately, I won't be able to play the video, so I'm going to have to just skip over that. What you see here is what was our traditional Windows 10 student desktop. Now, as you can see in the background, that is just a folder of software tiles. These are just software tiles that were installed on every single student-facing machine across the university, pre-AppsAnywhere. And this is just a list of software that was part of what we call our finalised process. What we then found is that our staff, my staff within my team, had to then start deploying software to labs and classrooms that had different modules, different programs, different requirements on top of all of this software. Now, as you can imagine, that in itself is a Herculean feat. If you are experiencing this now, if nothing else, absolutely will take this pain away from you. We would spend probably 5 weeks of the summer flat out preparing software for deployment locally and or via network deployment to these labs. And then what would happen, we would be ready for the start of term, an academic would arrive, and for whatever reason, whether it be the wallpaper, the environment, the room, the air conditioning, they would then request timetabling to move. That, for them, is a simple enough exercise. But for us to then move all of those software tiles across to another lab in a timely fashion was, again, a Herculean effort. It was so time consuming and unmanageable to a point, because there's only so much we can test. And one of the things that we did suffer from is students would run different software tiles randomly for whatever reason, and the machine could blue screen because it just couldn't cope. So this was pre-AppsAnywhere. This is what our student desktop looks like today. It's clean, it's fresh. There is not hundreds and hundreds of software tiles installed on anything. Everything the student requires is through AppsAnywhere. That is our sole software mechanism delivery to our entire student community. We no longer install local software tiles and labs that we manage, and haven't done now for a good few years. This is actually a snapshot of my desktop today. I literally took this picture this morning just to show how clean our staff desktop is, because we have rolled out AppsAnywhere to our entire Windows 10 Enterprise staff corporate estate. So all of the software you see down the left-hand side has all been run through AppsAnywhere. And bar a local installation of Microsoft Office, a few utilities that we have installed to manage the desktop devices and remote access, everything again is delivered through AppsAnywhere. The issue we encountered, I talked about this earlier when we went to do phase 5, a little thing called Corona. We sat there, and like many organisations, sat there and thought, how are we going to cope? We have to pivot 180 degrees from full-time teaching and learning on campus, professional services needing access to software, our academic community needing software to teach, our students that have paid good fees to be able to be taught in a collegiate fashion. And we really had to have a hard think about it, and we had to react very quickly. So our response, over many years, Middlesex University has had a strategy of moving staff from traditional fixed desktops to laptops to support enterprise mobility, work-life balance, which we've been rolling out probably now for a good part of 10 years. So we was pretty much at the 85% mark of staff who are already on laptops. We redirected our funding on campus. We had a £1 million refresh that year for multiple labs across the classroom, across the campus, and our classroom estate. And we redirected that entire £1 million to our loan laptop scheme. We expanded our loan laptop scheme from 300 to 1,400 laptops, and students could come to campus in a COVID-safe process, book a laptop, take a laptop, and have a long-term loan laptop, which they could take off-prem. If you recall, I said earlier that AppsAnywhere was already on the loan laptop scheme. So this was just an extension. We just had to build 1,000 more student laptops straight out of the box, image them, enroll them into, get them working with AppsAnywhere. And because they were corporate-owned devices, those student loan laptops had access to every single piece of software that was available in every single lab, open access space across the university. We was recognised for that by the What Uni Awards in the Student Support Categories runners-up in 2021 because of our reaction with the student loan laptops. As our response, like many other areas, we had to do a massively accelerated rollout of Microsoft Teams. We were planning to roll it out in the summer of last year, but obviously COVID meant that that was not a possibility. So we had to seriously roll Microsoft Teams out to support teaching and learning urgently, and internal communications, and the ability for staff to meet in a decent fashion, because the tools we had previously weren't really fit for purpose. We had to do an accelerated rollout of Enterprise Zoom, which was never on our radar. We never intended rolling out Zoom as a platform within Middlesex University, but in order to support blended learning and teaching, remote teaching and support, we had no choice. So we rolled out Enterprise Zoom to every single academic in the university and made it available to every single student within the university. Microsoft Teams was also made available to cohorts of students who who were working with their academics so they could share information. And so it was more of a choice for the academic. Do I use Teams? Do I use Zoom? They went for a data impact assessment. Teams were created and released to students. We had to do an accelerated rollout of BYOD for staff. We only supply equipment to staff who are 0.6 FTE and above. We have a heavy reliance on part-time staff who use their own equipment. Now, what we used to provide on the campus was a whole bank of strategically placed shared desktop devices that staff could log into securely, access their information, do their timesheets, whatever they needed to do. But obviously, with the campus closure and the lockdown, that evaporated. So we had to accelerate the rollout of BYOD to our staff estate. And as I touched upon earlier, we then had to take the decision to also roll out AppsAnywhere to our entire corporate staff estate to support teaching and learning. We had to do 8 of these objectives within probably a month and a half of returning to campus after Christmas. We are a very risk-averse organisation, and you will see from the 5 phases of the project that we did was that, you know, we would take incremental tentative steps, and we didn't rush it. We had no choice but to actually hit the metaphorical launch button after about week 8 of returning to campus. Because of the knowledge that we'd gained with AppsAnywhere and the knowledge that we've gained and the trust we had in the technology in AppsAnywhere, we weren't worried about the release of AppsAnywhere to BYOD and staff. We were more concerned about Teams and Zoom and the impact upon that. So we did that very, very, very quickly. And I've got to say, thanks to the teams that are involved, very, very, very successfully. So where are we now? We're returning to campus with a smooth transition with no issues, but so far, fingers crossed. As everybody knows, this time of year, it's silly season on campus. So we're getting all kinds of weird and wonderful requests. So we're dealing with those as we go on, but that's just business as usual when the start of term begins. I'm not telling anybody anything new. There's not an epiphany for anybody. We've been working as an organisation for 1.5 years to attain Cyber Essentials accreditation, and AppsAnywhere has assisted us in that journey. We are hoping to have a submission by the end of November to become accredited and regain our Cyber Essentials accreditation. Because of AppsAnywhere being rolled out to staff and BYOD, it's only Microsoft Office applications, management utilities that are installed on all of our corporate devices. As I said earlier, apart from Microsoft Office and 1 or 2 other utilities, everything else is delivered by AppsAnywhere. That ensures that all of our staff devices accessing university information or accessing are completely up to date. We only have to update 1 piece of software and then publish it, as opposed to trying to update 1,800 to 2,000 laptops over a period of time and hoping that we actually get them updated. As I said, that allows us to keep all of our software up to date at all times. Under CE compliance, if anybody's doing it, done it, or on that journey, you have to remediate any critical or high vulnerabilities within 14 days. That was literally impossible for us when we had locally installed software, because people would be off campus, they wouldn't VPN, all kinds of different reasons why that software would go out of date and those devices would show as uncompliant very, very quickly. We've seen a massive increase of staff using BYOD, as I described earlier. I touched upon the point that 0.6 FTE staff and below do not get equipment. So the ability for staff to use BYOD has been incredibly important. What we have done is, as soon as a license is due to expire or the maintenance contract expires, we review the license terms and conditions and see, if possible and if it's affordable, to allow those software titles to also be allowed on non-corporate devices. We've had some success in some areas and some we haven't, because of the cost is prohibitive. But we have seen more software titles being made available for BYOD and more staff actually using those software titles. Therefore, supporting what we're calling not so much the face-to-face teaching, but the blended learning, high flex approach to accessing teaching and learning materials. That's all supported by BYOD as well. So where are we now? Again, AppsAnywhere completely embedded in our estate. Our second and third year students are just used to it. They know where it is. They know what it does. Our first year students come in and go, oh wow, this is really clever. This is very amazing. I can use software anytime, anywhere, the rest of it, which is fantastic for us. As I said, BYOD for all staff and students, complete, done. We have rolled out AppsAnywhere to our entire Windows staff estate as part of our CE compliance work stream, where we've re-imaged every single Windows staff machine. This is how we've enabled AppsAnywhere to allow us to have that software on our estate. We currently have 151 software titles cloudified, and more being added all the time. What I'm starting to see now is a trend from specialist areas who historically didn't want to look at AppsAnywhere, quite happy in their little bubble, managing their software, keeping their software updated. And now that we have the ability to provide their software that runs on their specialist hardware in those spaces only, and then take away the overhead and the management of the patching, the updating of that software, I'm starting to see more and more specialist areas, especially from our science and tech colleagues and some colleagues within the arts and creative industries, actually reaching out to us and saying, can we start to have some of our software cloudified and published in our specialist spaces, to which we are like, absolutely. We have a seamless deployment of software throughout the academic year. Magnus touched upon it earlier. We used to have a very similar setup where twice a year there was a hard stop where you could submit requests for software. We do have a process. We have an approval process, and we then have a release process. We no longer have those hard stops. Staff can request software at any point throughout the academic year. They go through the approval process, the application process, and then the testing and release process. It has taken away so much peaks and troughs of activity that we used to really struggle with being such a lean department. The beauty of this is as well, one of the problems, the beauty of AppsAnywhere, sorry, one of the problems that we faced, like many other organisations, is that we literally could not get into spaces to update the software throughout the academic year because we would disrupt teaching and learning. Historically, we would have Easter, half term, summer holidays, Christmas, and when the students break up to get everything done. We have a caveat now that says to every single member of staff applying for a piece of software that we, CCSS, have the right to update that software at any point throughout the entire academic year to make sure it remains compliant. That means we can update the software seamlessly without impacting any teaching and learning whatsoever. I get complaints about pretty much everything being the operations manager, from the colour of oranges to the computers to the hardware, the network, the air conditioning, every manner of complaint. One thing I've never had a complaint about is AppsAnywhere. I've never had an academic come to me or my team and say, this isn't working for us. I would like to go back to the traditional model of having locally installed software that we manage locally ourselves. It just has not happened. Once people understand how AppsAnywhere works, once they could see the benefits, they've never turned back. We have had this in place now for a good few years, and not a single academic has ever come to me and said, this has been a bad idea, I wish you'd never done it. In fact, as I touched upon earlier, we've actually seen more academics coming through saying, can we be part of your journey as well? So, drawing this to a close, again, anybody that's already done the AppsAnywhere journey, this is not new to you, this is not an epiphany. It's just a few simple tips that I personally abide by. Tentative steps, avoid big bang approach if you can help it. Now, COVID, I said that, COVID threw that out the window for us for staff, but it was well worth it. Immerse the team in their technology, allow them to have best practice days, allow them to have headroom to be able to really understand the technology. It has moved on. When we first started this journey, my staff used to package the software. I've got 4 or 5 staff now who can package software in their sleep. But more and more of that, I'm looking to say, let's push that out to the awesome guys at AppsAnywhere, because that frees them up to do more project-related work and less packaging of software. So with those changes, we're embracing those changes as we go. Assume nothing, test everything. This might sound really stupid, But during our proof of concept, we were like, this is all marvelous, this is fantastic. And we would uninstall every piece of software from a machine. We would layer AppsAnywhere on top of it, and we'd start to get some really weird behavior. And of course, looking back, it's an absolute no-brainer. The team have gone, well, why don't you re-image the machines? Because you could have residual DLL, registry files, etc., that are causing problems. And we're like, well, maybe we should do that. Once we did that, we proved that it works seamlessly. We ended up doing a project during the summer, during our summer release, where we re-imaged every single student machine in the university, circa 3,000. And that meant our release of AppsAnywhere to our student estate was seamless. If you can, standardize every environment where you can. Just to push this point home, we are a very lean department. We do not have the luxury of being able to provide libraries of images to all our different faculties, libraries of images to all different cohorts within the university. We have one staff build, one student build, and one AV build. That's it. The reason we've got that is because we have a baseline of image for everybody. AppsAnywhere then allows every single area to access their software on that same image. So we literally have 3 images for the entire university, which has taken a long time to get to, but it has proved highly effective. Again, reach out to AppsAnywhere for team for their support and training. I often talk about supplier-client relationships. I think it was Caroline that touched upon it earlier. I don't see our relationship with AppsAnywhere as like that. It's been a strategic partnership from the start. We have been immersed in the technology. We've been privileged to have awesome people supporting us, and I personally, and my team personally, are very much looking forward to continuing that strategic partnership going forward. This might sound like a small point, auto-launch AppsAnywhere in the labs and classrooms. I wasn't convinced. I thought it was too intrusive. I took a lot of convincing, and my team who are on the call will tell you that they convinced me, and it's the best decision we ever made. If you walk into a student lab now, you power in, you log on, AppsAnywhere is there, and nobody's complained. Nobody doesn't want it because everything they need is there in the portal for them, ready to go. Again, if you can, make AppsAnywhere available for staff. Simplify your management of your desktop environment, simplify your management of your laptop environment. That has really worked for us. And if you are going for CE compliance, you have to remediate those vulnerabilities in a fixed period of time. And like us, if you don't have AppsAnywhere where you can do a one-to-many update, you will struggle. Organise effective feedback channels. The one thing I struggled with during the entire project was to get effective feedback from our students. We used to think no news was good news, but I just couldn't get the feedback. I didn't get any complaints, but I just couldn't get the feedback. So if you can crack that nut, then please let me know how you did it, because I'd love to know. And lastly, get students involved in the design of the portal. As we've seen earlier, as the next iterations come along and the new versions are being released, involve your students. Let your clients decide what the look and feel looks like. Don't leave it. Don't let, we took a conscious decision that me and my team sat in a little room somewhere, believing we know what's best for students. We let the students decide what was best for them. And there's some tips that I would give to anybody embarking on an AppsAnywhere journey. That's been our journey so far. Thank you very much for taking your time to listen to me. And I hope that's been helpful. So thank you very much. Caroline.
Hi there, sorry, it appears that my camera took a moment to come through. We have had a few questions. I'm just checking to see, Roger, if they've come through to you. If not, I shall send them over to you now.
Sorry, I didn't see any questions because I hit the bar.
Do not worry, can you see them now?
Just trying to see, scroll down. I'm just seeing what you put as hi everyone, please remember you can ask questions.
No problem, I can send them to you in a different way. Here you go.
Remote campus, did you require local infrastructure for seamless server? Everything we do is in with we've got a split infrastructure. We have services in our remote in our data centre in Enfield, which is 9 miles away from our campus, and we also have some infrastructure locally on the campus. Everything we do is based on our service. The only cloud infrastructure we have is that we rent space in a private cloud with virtual servers on it. We don't have a traditional data center anymore, and we don't have any cloud services from AppsAnywhere yet. It's something we're looking to look at in the future, but as it stands at the moment, it's quite a traditional setup with servers in our data center and on our network computing room on the campus. How many IT staff are building application packages? Well, they wear many hats. They wear many hats, and some of them are on this call now, so I don't want to praise them too much in case they ask for pay rises. But I've got 5 staff who can all package software seamlessly. They are also part of the second line desktop development team. They are also part of the team that create images. So they're multi-skilled. Packaging was a big part of their role, but it's starting to become less of a part of their role now as we start to look at utilising the packaging services from AppsAnywhere, because we are too lean. We are simply too lean. We just couldn't cope if we had to do both. How have you explained BYOD to the software vendors? Series of meetings, to be honest. When we go, especially with renewals, all of our software, we insist any academic or any faculty that requires software that the costs of the maintenance and upgrade programs are there. What we did during our renewal was look at the license cap, how the licenses were configured and the costs thereafter. Some vendors during the pandemic charged us nothing to make them available on non-corporate devices. Others tried to charge us astronomical volumes of cash for those services. But what we do to our users is basically, if you log on to AppsAnywhere and you're not picking up an internal IP address, it only presents the software to you that's available via BYOD. But that list has expanded from when we started. But it was a sit down with your client relationship manager during the renewal and having a discussion and then exploratory talks. As I say, some were more successful than others. Do you have any concerns with the license terms and conditions from that? Not really. We didn't have any issues because we've got campuses in Malta. Well, the Malta campus is going to be closed shortly, but Mauritius and Dubai, they are provisioning their accounts on a part of our infrastructure. They are provisioned in our Office 365 tenancy. So it was never an issue. So they could access services and systems from their campuses. If they needed our internal services behind the firewall, they did it. They were things, but they're all university corporate devices. So we've never had an issue with that. We've never had a problem with our overseas campuses accessing certain software titles.
We have one last question that's just come through. Do you have a software rollback process for older version of apps?
Yes, sadly it's quite manual because because we've been so busy, we've really not had the chance to really dive into the analytics, which is what I'm pushing for, because we have to retire our old software titles, and historically we would have something called a software panel. Wow, this is going back several years. And all it would ever be, the agenda would be, I want. Never about what we're going to retire, because we really struggled to have the analytics to back that up. We use things like Sassafras, but because we used to run scripts when they were loading, it was a very hit and miss process. Now with the analytics that we have at our disposal, we are now, at the end of every academic year, listing all of the software titles that are going to be removed and telling those sponsors, we have every software title as a sponsor and an owner. We write to those individuals and we tell them this software is going to be retired because blah, blah, blah. And then they get an opportunity to talk to us, because but being completely candid, what's very frustrating, you could have a piece of software that's probably used 3 times throughout a module in a year, but it's required. From an analytics perspective, it looks like it's hardly ever being used, but to that academic on that module during that program, it's vitally important. So we give them an opportunity to have that conversation. If it's required, If it's licensed and if it's kept up to date, we keep it. If it's not used, we announce it, we remove it, we get rid of it.
Perfect, thank you. It looks like that is all our questions that we have today, and I know time is ticking on and I don't want to keep anyone any longer than they need be. Thank you all so much for attending, and thank you so much, Roger, for sharing your story in such a great and relatable way. If anybody does have any questions that they haven't been able to get around to asking, or we haven't got around to answering, you can follow these up with an email, and we will be sending all the answers to these in a follow-up email early next week. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a lovely rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.